The world has changed. There is new technology arriving now at eye-watering speeds. And that technology is not just for the techies in the organization, it might find use absolutely anywhere. And what that also means is that in every organization in the world now, whether they are a commercial company, a charity, a not-for-profit, a member association, or a government organization, change now has to be normal. Change is something that is happening all the time. The status quo will never exist ever again. And what that also means, of course, is it puts a big focus on our leadership skills. We need very highly honed leadership skills to handle change and what that means to our people. So what I'd like to spend a little time talking about this morning is to get up there in our helicopter, get up there and look at the big picture and look at leadership, technology, and change. So let's start with technology. I think a core competence of every organization now has to be the ability to assimilate new technology, to adapt it and to adopt it, and to do that incredibly quickly. But what am I talking about? Let's have a look at 2 or 3 technologies and see what I'm talking about. 3D printing. It's now pretty well universally recognized that the effect of 3D printing on the world is going to be greater than the Industrial Revolution. So let's get ourselves all on the same page.
Could you reproduce this wrench? Absolutely. It has moving parts here. Not a problem. First thing we need to do is scan it. All right, take a look. Yeah. Let's see it. Here we go.
The scanner inputs every facet of the wrench into this computer, creating an image that will be sent to the printer.
Oh, that is cool. How accurately can you measure the shape?
The accuracy is within 40 microns.
That's like a human hair width.
Actually, a little less.
That's incredible. All right, so the wrench was scanned.
Here's the wrench that you did.
Okay, can you make that ring red?
Sure. I want to select it and paint that piece is red.
I see.
Just that simple. When we're ready, we just go down and hit print. All right, Dave. Printing's done. Let's take a look at your wrench.
Okay. I don't see anything.
It's in there. Just reach into the powder and pull out your wrench.
Okay. Holy cow. Wow.
Yep, there's a real wrench right there.
Oh my God, you printed this.
Yeah, it came right out of the powder.
That's amazing.
So all it's left to do is blow off the rest of that powder.
That is cool.
Yeah.
A color 3D printer. I'm freaked out by this. It doesn't make sense. I'm holding this thing that has moving parts and it just came out of a printer. Wow.
Just that easy.
This changes everything.
This changes everything. I like to think of 3D printing as a little like a sliced loaf backwards. You lay down the slices to build up the loaf. And the original 3D printers were using polymers, using plastics. But these days, there's 3D printing using all kinds of materials. Some examples for you. These are hinges on an Airbus A320 plane. They're titanium. That's a mount on an RAF jet. And this is still experimental, but highly complex fiber optic cable for the communications industry that any minute now are going to be 3D printed commercially. But there's less obvious applications also. A surgeon in Yorkshire in the UK had a patient whose pelvis was disintegrating, so they 3D printed a new one. That's pretty cool. In China, a surgeon has 3D printed new vertebra for a patient. Something like 30% of artificial knee joints are now 3D printed. At the moment, they're all the same, but any minute now they will be taking an X-ray of your knee and they will 3D print exactly for you. And that's a beacon, a toucan. Food is now being 3D printed. All of these are 3D printed. 3D printed pizzas, confectionery. I'm not sure about this one. This is, the idea here is that this is a Spanish company that on Valentine's Day you send your partner chocolates with your face 3D printed on it. Really, really not sure about that. Have a look at this. Was the world's first 3D printed car. But I know what you're thinking. We're a regulatory authority. What's this got to do with us? This is for the techies. It's not for me. Well, of course, you're more than a regulatory authority. If I look at your strategic goals, you have a responsibility for leadership in smart technological infrastructure throughout the United Arab Emirates. You have a responsibility to enhance the smart lifestyle in the UAE and to establish a culture of innovation. So it seems to me that every member of TRA needs to be thinking about this new technology and taking initiatives because, and we're going to talk about leadership later, but you know, these things cannot just come from above. It needs to be all of us thinking about this technology. Now, in the past, technology was all about cost and expense, but the vast majority of these new technologies that are coming out these days actually cost nothing. And that's a whole new world for us. So back to 3D printing. Is it just for the techies? Well, at this moment, the main board of McDonalds are actively thinking about putting a 3D printer into every single restaurant in the world. Because 3D printers are now cheap. They cost very little. So what's this all about? Well, you go into McDonald's with your son or your daughter, and whilst they're eating their hamburger, they will 3D print a happy doll for them with their face on them. This is about sales and marketing. It's nothing to do with the techies. Someone in McDonald's has thought through that potential way to enhance their business. I love this one. This is a Belgian insurance company, and they increased their policyholders in 2015 by 28% on the back of 3D printing. Now, how can an insurance company do that? Well, what they realized was a lot of us lose our keys. And when we lose the keys to our house, it costs an awful lot of money to replace the locks. So what they did was they went to all their policyholders and said, we will scan your keys, we'll keep them in a secure location. If ever you lose your keys, you contact us 24/7. We will 3D print a new key and courier it to you immediately. As a direct result, the number of policyholders they had went up by 28%. This was the most successful competition that Muji and All Nippon Airlines have ever held in their history. Muji is a Japanese hardware company. And throughout 2016, if you went into a Muji store and you wished to enter the competition, they would do a complete body scan of you. If you won the competition, you were flown to an exotic location by All Nippon Airlines, and you were united with a meter-high, exact 3D printed copy of yourself. Footfall through Muji stores went up 30%. It's nothing to do with the techies. This is sales and marketing. But you know something? 3D printing is not a new technology at all. It's at least 25 years old. I'm an engineer by profession, and 25 years ago, 3D printing was invented, and they called it rapid prototyping. And it was given to the engineers, given to the techies who said, thank you very much. And it's been hidden away for 25 years, until now, only now, we're realizing it's going to have a greater effect than the Industrial Revolution. And we must never let that happen again, in my view. We've got to make sure this technology does not disappear into a silo, because it really might find use absolutely anywhere. This was launched at the Las Vegas show earlier this year. This is the first time there's now 3D printing using paper, glue, and razors. It's absolutely perfect for schools, for universities, and for offices. I actually think that every organization of every size here in the UAE ought to have a 3D printer and ought to be playing with it to see how they might use it. Because it is not for somebody else, it's for us. And I'd like to think that TRA are the champions of promoting that technology throughout the country. But 3D printers cost something. Let's have a look at something that's really very simple, that costs nothing at all. That's a QR code, yeah? Generally speaking, you point your smartphone at that QR code and it will take you, let's say, to a website. So QR codes are for sales and marketing. They're not really anything to do with the rest of us. Or are they? I was in Germany a few weeks ago and I was visiting a company, and they told me they were very difficult to find, so the HR department sent me a map. I don't want a map. What I want is a QR code with the coordinates in so my smartphone will take me to them. But who in that company would think about telling HR what a QR code is? How would they find out? How in TRA would HR find out what a QR code is and what you could use it for? Because again, it is not just for sales and marketing. I was in hospital recently and I had a new knee. The identity bracelet on my wrist did not have my name on. It had a QR code on. In there were my entire medical records. Every time a doctor or a nurse came near me, they checked who I was. Every procedure went in there. That's about operational efficiency. I met recently with two gentlemen who were running the largest bearing factory in the world. They have 4 massive lines working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they told me that they are just experimenting on one of the lines. They have thrown away all their barcode readers, all their expensive equipment, and they are using QR codes together with individual smartphones in order to run that line. Cost 0. I like 0. It's a nice number, 0. But who's thinking like that? I was saying to the Director General earlier that one of the problems, I think, is that we are given budgets. And if we are given budgets, we like to spend them. So we don't look at things that cost nothing. We need to, because we're living in a whole new world. Mercedes-Benz are the first car maker to put QR codes in the vehicle, and this is for the emergency services. In the event of an accident, it tells them exactly where to cut the vehicle so that people are not damaged inside. And I love this one. This is in Japan. Dementia patients, as you know, often go walkabout, and they forget where they are. So in Japan, what they're doing is they are supergluing a QR code onto their thumb. So if they get lost, any of us can point our smartphone at that and take them home. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that an outstanding use of very simple technology that costs nothing? But the question I must keep asking you is, who's thinking like that in TRA? Who's thinking how they could be helping the country with something as simple as that. I truly believe these are the most exciting times we're living in ever. But we've got to take initiative and we've got to take these opportunities. I decided when I wrote my latest book that I had to walk the talk. So my latest book is full of QR codes, and the QR codes take you to white papers, they take you to videos, they take you to animations. It's a three-dimensional book. It's not two-dimensional, it's three-dimensional. There's also a free app that comes with the book, which allows you to regularly do business health checks. And I'll be honest with you, I'm very proud of the fact that on Amazon I now have 45 4- and 5-star reviews, and one of them says, "This is the future of books." Why? Why have operating instructions that are two-dimensional when they could be three? Why have sales literature that is two-dimensional when it could be three? Why have regulatory specifications that are two-dimensional when they could be three? Again, the cost is zero. It's that number again, 0. Many of us have different ways of learning. So why not do it? The technology is there now, and it's really very simple, but it needs someone to think about it. I mentioned apps. I regularly go to Pakistan, and Lahore has now become a center of app development. There's young people there developing apps, and Microsoft and Google are beating a path to their door, which is really quite something for a country like Pakistan. But something else I find exciting is they are not just thinking about commercial applications. Up until 2 or 3 years ago, in Lahore, there used to be something like 20,000 cases of dengue fever a year. And dengue fever, as I understand it, is a little like malaria. It comes from stagnant water and mosquitoes. Now, it's down to a few dozen cases a year. And there is only one reason for that, an app that was developed locally. It's called Clean Lahore. And it couldn't be more simple, really. Firstly, the council workers, whose job it is to clear the stagnant water, they used to say they'd done it when often they hadn't. Now, they have a simple app with one button to press, it photographs, and it shows the coordinates. The second thing they did was they went to the whole population of Lahore and said, please download the free app, and if you ever see stagnant water, same. One button, it photographs the water and gives the coordinates. As a result, dengue fever cases down from 20,000 to a dozen. That is just a phenomenal use of technology, in my opinion. And it's that question again. Who's thinking like that within TRA or within the UAE? Let's have a look at another technology.
When you buy furniture online, it often comes down to a simple question. How would it look in my living room? Augment for e-commerce brings down this barrier to online purchase. Tap the Try at Home button. Point your camera at the marker and you'll see the couch right away, in real size, in your living room. You can turn around it. You can move it to find the best spot. It is real. What you see is what you get. Whether you sell high-tech products, fashion products, or artworks and posters, Augment will boost your conversion rate drastically. Augment is also an amazing tool for salespeople on the field. Show all your products in 3D and in real size, directly in your customer's environment, and capture their imagination. Try merchandising tools directly on the point of sales and customize the store in real time. Present your architecture or interior design projects in a stunning way. Augment helps you sell better. Your imagination is the limit.
Augmented reality. So, in London, there's plans at the moment to build a new bridge over the River Thames, and it's going to be called a garden bridge. And the architects who've designed it, there's a free augmented reality app you can download, and if you use that and you go to where the bridge is going to be with your tablet, you can see exactly how the bridge would look. You can go underneath it and look up. You could fly over it. You could see exactly how it is. And they supply what are called back deck systems for use in oil fields. So they go 250-ton structures, go on the back of ships for laying fiber optic cable or pipe work. And we are developing an AR app now, because when we're doing a pitch to a ship owner, we can go out, his ship's parked outside, we can go out and show him exactly how it will look on his ship. He can look at it closely, he can go above it, he can go underneath it. This technology is there now. Another example, this is a £10 note from the UK, and on the back is a photograph of Charles Darwin. Have a look at this. This is a screen grab I did from my own smartphone.
Get augmented.
This is a screen grab from my iPhone. I'm looking at a £10 note and using the Erasmus app.
Welcome to the future, the next stage of human evolution. Erasmus, the world's first visual browser, bringing the physical and the virtual worlds together. Get experimenting.
And finally, just have a look at this. Oh, sorry, I forgot I'd written this. I put this down. Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, just last month said that augmented reality will soon be as important as eating 3 meals a day. That's where we are today. If you are not using augmented reality, you are already behind.
This is the 2015 Hyundai Sonata, and this is the new virtual guide. It's sort of a digital owner's manual that helps you do things like check how much oil is in the car or fill up the windshield washer fluid. If you wanted to replace your air filter, you tap on air filter, it'll show you what you need to do and walk you through the process. And you can even put it down and it'll still show you the steps. So you can put your phone down and still have it walk you through it. So now we're inside the car. It'll show you what the different switches do, and you can pan around and see just about everything.
So there you go, augmented reality. But let's look at some facts. Some research has been done, firstly with school children, using augmented reality, and it shows that learner retention, if you're learning English or maths, has gone up 18%. That's phenomenal. That is remarkable. Motor vehicle mechanics, equally. Retention has gone up 13%. I was recently speaking to a group of people, and in the audience were 2 people who ran 4 power stations. And they said to me, that's remarkable. The biggest problem we have running power stations is training new operators. And they are now adopting augmented reality as part of their training process, because those figures, I'm sure you would agree, are remarkable. So, ladies and gentlemen, does that make any sense for TRA? In what way? How would you think TRA can use any of this stuff?
It definitely gives you a different perception of thought, looking at the same thing with different angles.
Yeah.
Which would definitely grant some more thinking capacity to you.
Thank you. What this gentleman said was, it's allowing you to look at things from a different point of view, and I think that's absolutely right. We need to open our minds, because it's so easy for us to pigeonhole technology and to say, that's for the techies, that's for sales and marketing. But this stuff, and I repeat, it's arriving at eye-watering speed, might find use absolutely anywhere. Incredibly exciting. So, Back to what I showed at the beginning. A core competence we all need to have is the ability to assimilate this technology firstly, to understand exactly what's out there. How do we do that? How do we know it even exists? Well, there's a simple answer to that. You need millennials, people under the age of 30, because they just get this stuff. You, those of you who are under the age of 30, just get this stuff. I think there's a beam straight into you. You need millennials. PricewaterhouseCoopers did a major piece of research, and one of the things they said was the millennials are the first generation to have a better grasp of a key business tool than more experienced workers. It's never happened in history before. Millennials know stuff the rest of us don't. And what does that mean for us? What does it mean for our culture of our organization? Well, my opinion is it means that we need to listen to millennials. Never again can we say you start at the bottom and you work your way up the ladder. We need millennials on the top table, and we need to listen to them because they know stuff nobody else does. The UAE population, 45% are millennials. I understand within TRA that figure is probably even higher. You're in pole position here in TRA to be utilizing millennials in the way that we've talked about. By the way, something else that millennials hate are silos. And we've already said we can't have silos anymore. So that plays well. Oh, there we go. Millennials tend to be uncomfortable with rigid corporate structures and turned off by silos. That's part of the same PwC report. I actually think we have to think very hard about our culture of our organization for the future if we want to continue to be successful. And while we're at it, by the way, let's not forget the web and all this stuff. Are we using this stuff within TRA? I mean, let me just take an example. Periscope and Facebook Live, that pretty well do the same thing. And for those of you who don't know, if we talk Periscope, I think the best description I've ever had of Periscope, it's free, by the way, it's a free app. It's like having a TV outside broadcast truck inside your smartphone. It allows you to broadcast to the world or to selected people, and most importantly, it allows them to respond to you. I used to have 14 companies around the world and thousands of employees. And I'm sure you would agree, one of the most difficult things to do in any company is communication. It's communication with your own people. Just imagine what I could have done. I could have said to everyone around the world, I'm going to talk to you at 9 o'clock on Friday morning. Please download the free app. And I could then be talking to every single person in the organization around the world directly, personally, on their smartphone. And equally, they could respond. They could say, boss, you haven't talked about what's going on in Dubai. Could you please tell us? And live, I could respond to that. I think that is a phenomenal business tool. By the way, in case I haven't made clear, it costs nothing again. TRA's job is to be in the forefront of communication technology within the UAE. That doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be sophisticated. It might be just simply promoting the use of Facebook Live or Periscope, because it's a communication tool, in my opinion, to die for. Okay. So, we've assimilated all this stuff. We know it exists. Now what? Well, what we've then got to do is to adapt it, to see how we might use it in our organization. And we've got to do that quickly. And we've then got to adopt it and use it and get it out there incredibly quickly, because it's already out of date. There is now 4D printing. If you look on YouTube, you'll see examples of 4D printing, and that's where the component prints itself. Pretty scary stuff. Now again, talking the culture of any organization, to do that pretty quickly means Maybe you need different structures to what you have now. We're used to having approvals for things because we're going to spend money. We're used to being pretty sure that we're not taking a big risk. And I think these days with this new technology, we've got to do the opposite. We've got to be entrepreneurial, and it won't all work. But you know, some of the stuff that will work might absolutely transform what we're doing. Does that make any sense? My job today is just to get you thinking, that's all. And I think one of the really important messages for me is it doesn't have to be complex. I'm sure in this room we have got some absolute technical expertise that know about telecoms communication technology like no other. But it doesn't have to be high tech. Have a look at this. Why haven't I got any sound?
It's so dark. It's like 7 in the evening whenever you get in the house.
Oh dear, I'm not sure what's going on here. I apologize. This is in the Philippines, where a lot of people live in tin shacks, and at night they couldn't see anything. So what this guy invented, as you'll see in a moment, is just using waste plastic water bottles.
In communities such as this, the plastic bottles are not thrown away. They're actually reabsorbed into the solar bulb. Bunker fuel is used to light up a lot of the provincial electricity grids. And so what happens is you're actually making it cheaper to be able to run a household.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is the guy who's just making these. He's putting these, as you can see, in the roof. It's got water with chlorine in so it doesn't deteriorate. And the sun is therefore reflected into the building, and it's lighting up all these people's houses. There you go. The ultimate low-tech solution.
It's the light of life. It's really great to be able to see your house and move around without having to turn on the lights during the day.
So, you get the idea. So, that's all around technology. I've just touched on some of the technology that's out there. There is so much stuff that's still coming. What I thought I would do is try and draw a picture, a simple picture of winning organizations and how they need to be structured for the future. So we've talked about new technology, we haven't talked about it, but equally there are new markets arriving very quickly these days. Nothing's a given anymore in terms of any market sector out there. There are new ones arriving. And what we need to have is agility. We need to have the ability to move very quickly in our organization. And you might say to me, that's actually the opposite of what a regulatory authority does. I have to say that's sort of your problem to deal with, because I think somehow you've got to develop this agility. To do that, you need millennials, and you need, as we've said, no silos. But there's something else. If we're really going to take on board all this new stuff that's out there, we need truly performing teams, teams that are more than the sum of the parts. Performing teams come from 4 things. Comes from the people, their skills and their behavioral profiles. It comes from the leadership, providing direction, structure, organization, and motivation. That's your job as leaders. Direction, structure, organization, and motivation. It comes from the relationships within the team. That's all about mutual trust, respect, and support. And finally, it comes from the culture and the atmosphere within the team. So, let's have a look at the behavioural profiles. It's a whole area that we often ignore. All of us are different. All of us are built differently. And at its simplest, psychologists have shown there are left-brain people and right-brain people, and they come at things from a totally different direction. So let me try and show this to you. It's what I call my behavioural characteristic model. So left-brain people, generally speaking, their head rules their heart. That's the sort of people they are. Right-brain people, on the other hand, their heart tends to rule their head. Left-brain people seek security, they're methodical, they're vertical thinkers. That's the sort of person they are. I think you can start picturing those sorts of people already. Right-brain people tend to be creative, they tend to be flexible, and you know what? They actually like change. They get a bit bored when things don't change. That's the type of people they are. There's nothing you can do about it. It's their DNA. Left-brain people want stability. They want to control emotions. Emotions are nothing to do with what I do at work. And they seek approval for a job well done. That's what they're after. Approval for a job well done. Right-brain people, however, they want change. They want to be liked. It's not approval for them. They want to be liked personally. And they always seek reassurance. That's the type of people they are. And all of us are anchored somewhere on a line, where none of us are all one or all the other. We may be anchored anywhere along that line. And as far as leadership skills are concerned, left-brain people are very good at control. They're exceptionally good at control, as you would imagine. Right-brain people, however, are very good at nurture. So very broadly, these are things people. Those are people. But why is all this important? Well, as leaders, we need to be able to press people's hot buttons. We need to understand where people are coming from because we're not all the same. If we want a truly performing team, we need to understand where each and every person in our team is anchored. What are the things that motivate them? Because what motivates this person will not be the same as what motivates that person. And it's our job, therefore, as leaders, to be perceptive of that. I think it's a really important skill for everyone who is a leader to be perceptive of every one of our team members and where they are anchored and where they are at any moment in time. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. Let me share something else with you now. And this is a piece of research that was done where they asked employees what they wanted from their employers in order of priority. What are the top 8 things that you want from your employers? So let me just share those with you. Number 1, I want to know what my role is. I want to know what gets me a pat on the back. I don't want a 49-page job spec from HR. I want my boss, the person I report to tell me what success looks like for me. That's my top priority. Number 2, I want to see my co-workers disciplined. If a co-worker steps out of line, I don't want soft management. It's unfair. I want to see them disciplined. Second highest priority. Soft leadership, soft management is unfair. This is what the employees are saying to us. Number 3, I want to be excited when I come to work. You know, I spend more time awake at work than I do at home. I want to get up every morning and go, yeah, I'm really looking forward to today. I'm going to have a great time in TRA. I want praise. It's a basic human need. I want praise. I was very lucky when I was a young guy, a new graduate. My first boss was an amazing guy. His name was Arthur Shillito. And if I'd been in a meeting with Arthur and a third party, maybe a customer or a supplier, often on my desk would appear within a couple of hours a handwritten note, and it would say, Roger, thank you so much for your contribution to the meeting. I really appreciate it, Arthur. Young guy, my chest would go out, my shoulders would go back. There was nothing I wouldn't do for Arthur Shillito. And I'd just say to you, every single one of you, however much praise you've been giving, please give 3 times as much. And it's not just to the people beneath you, it's to your peers. Nothing wrong with saying that was a great idea you came up with. But it's also upwards. The higher up you get, the lonelier it gets. But we are still human beings and we still have needs. There's nothing wrong with saying to your boss, you ran that meeting really well, that was great. We all need praise. Don't scare me. I was a bit concerned about this when I first saw it because I guess my style is, if we've got a problem, it's backs to the wall, it's Dunkirk spirit and all that. So I looked into this some more, and what actually they're saying is, don't scare us just for the sake of it. We get enough of that from the television and the newspapers. When you're clear about what it is you want us to do, come and tell us then, but don't just scare us for the sake of it. I want to be impressed by my boss. I want autonomy. This plays absolutely to what we were talking about just now with millennials. Please trust me. Don't abrogate your management responsibility, still do all the checks and balances, but trust me. Don't micromanage me. A very good friend of mine is a senior pilot training instructor with a major airline. And he said something to me the other day which I thought was really interesting. He said to me when he first started as a pilot instructor, he really wasn't very successful with his pupils. And what he realized he was doing was micromanaging them. He wasn't allowing them to make mistakes. And he said this phrase, which I just love. He said, experience is the sum of survivable mistakes. As leaders, I would argue that's what we all need to do. We need to allow every single person under us to make mistakes that are survivable. Yeah? Autonomy. And the last one is win. I want to be part of a winning organization, whatever that means. I want to go home at night and go, yes, we're getting there, wherever there is. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the top 8 in order of priority. And it seems to me, as leaders, as colleagues, we need to take all those on board. Because it's our job, I would suggest, to make sure. If you wanted to put a mark out of 10 against each of those, it's what? It's up in the 8 or 9s within our organization. Any thoughts, anybody on that? I was asked to make this interactive. That means you speak as well as me. Just to make that clear. Does that make sense? Is it okay? Not okay? I got a thumb. Okay, a thumb. That'll do. How about Abu Dhabi? Anyone in Abu Dhabi got anything to tell us? No. I think they're all asleep. Okay. Have a look at this. It's very easy to assume that leadership is downwards. It's us managing the people underneath us. But leadership is 3-dimensional, ladies and gentlemen. There's outwards leadership. This is leading people over whom we have no authority, our peers. But there are always occasions when we're doing that. And probably the most important leadership of all is upwards leadership. This is when we're telling our boss what he or she needs to hear, but not necessarily what he or she wants to hear. But it is very important.
This year your performance was good, excellent, and outstanding. So, your rating is average.
What? How come average?
Because you lack domain knowledge.
But last year you said I'm a domain expert and you put me in this project as a domain consultant.
Oh, is it? Well, in that case, I think your domain knowledge has eroded this year.
What?
Yes, I didn't see you sharing knowledge on purchasing domain.
Why would I? Because I am not in purchasing. I am in manufacturing.
This is what I don't like about you. You give excuse for everything. Next, you need to improve your communication skills.
Like what? I am the one who trained the team on business communication. You sat in the audience and took notes. You remember?
I mean, you need to improve your social pragmatic affirmative communication.
What the hell is that?
See, that's why you need to learn about it. Next, you need to sharpen your recruiting skills. All the guys you recruited left within 2 months.
Well, not my mistake. You told them you will sit beside them and review their code personally, and most resigned the next day itself. A couple of them even attempted suicide.
Anyway, I tried to give you a better rating, but our normalization process gave you only average.
Last year that process gave me excellent. This year just average. Why is this process pushing me up and down every year?
That's a complicated process. You don't want to hear.
I'll try to understand. Go ahead.
Well, we managers gather in a large room, write down the names of subordinates in small bits of paper and throw them up in the air. Whichever lands on the floor gets average. Whichever lands on table gets good. Whichever we manage to catch gets excellent. And whichever gets stuck to the ceiling gets outstanding.
This is ridiculous. So who gets poor rating?
Good question. Those are the ones we forget to write down.
What the? And how can paper bits stick to the ceiling for outstanding?
Oh, no. Now you have started questioning our 20-year-old organizational process.
I'm sure that's not real. So, tell me, what's the number one skill for a leader? Shout out, please. What do you reckon? What's number one skill that a leader needs? Communication. Oh. Sir. I still didn't hear you. Talismatic. Thank you. I can't spell. Talismatic. That is a C. It's just my bad writing.
Actually, not talismatic.
Charismatic. Sorry, I misunderstood you. Charismatic. Yep. Motivational. Innovation. Innovative.
Make everybody live in a common shared vision. I think that's
What's that in one word?
convincing.
I'll put shared vision. Yeah. People person. Anyone in Abu Dhabi? Are they there? Oh, it's over there. Sorry. Anyone in Abu Dhabi got any thoughts? Where do I hear them? Their microphone's off? Okay. Communication. TRA is the experts. Anything else? Vision. Negotiation was that. Leaders, you need to be a bit like me as a speaker. You're on the platform. And when you're on the platform, you need to be choosing when you are sharing information, when you're not sharing information. And generally speaking, that's what people need to see coming from us, a feeling of fun, energy, and excitement. The 3 top skills for the best business leaders from research that was done are these. Number 1, the very best leaders have very clear direction and purpose. They know exactly where it is they're trying to get the organization to, or the department to, or the team to, and they're clear about that direction as to how you're going to get wherever it is you're going. They have a learning mindset. Never ever do they believe they know it all. I think the fact that TRA is having this event today shows that, generally speaking, here in TRA, you have a learning mindset as an organization, and everyone in it has that. And I just say to you, more and more. Yeah, I understood every word he said. No, I didn't. That's what he was saying. Thank you. It's so important. I do come across, I generally spend my time working with CEOs. I do come across some CEOs who actually think they don't need any more education. They don't need any more training. And I think that's incredibly dangerous. We all need it all the time. And particularly, as we've been saying, with all this change that's happening, we can be out of date. We can be dinosaurs very quickly indeed. And finally, vitality and energy, and that plays into the last one that we were looking at. That's what the best leaders need. That's what you need to be demonstrating. So, where have we got to? So far today, we've had a look at some new technologies, just 4 or 5, and to be honest, none of them are new anymore. They're all out of date. I think QR codes, for example, were invented probably 15 years ago by Toyota. They're all out of date. But the point is, those technologies we need to take on board and use, not just within TRA, but out there, within the country as well. And I repeat, it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It might be very, very simple, where you can be helping a small business, a small organization, a charity, whatever it might be, with an app or a piece of technology of one sort or another. We've said that what follows from that is the need for clear leadership, for performing teams, teams that are many times the sum of the parts. And we've not spent a lot of time on that, but there are clear things that are needed. All of us have a different DNA, and one of those top skills, as well as listening, is this ability of perception of people and where people are coming from, how they're feeling. You know, it's very easy for a lot of us to think that actually at work feelings don't come into it. Feelings are something you leave at home. They are not. If you are pretty upset, if you're feeling bad, that will affect the whole team. And as leader, I need to be perceptive of that. If you're on a high and someone else is on a low, that can be toxic. As a leader and as a team member, I need to be perceptive of each and every other person in the team. So what about change? Because, as I said right at the beginning, I think change now is endemic. Change has to be normal in every organization. Is this microphone going on and off, or is it me? Is it all right? Is that okay? Change is something that's going to be happening all the time. I think cycles are getting faster and faster, and it isn't just technology, it's markets, it's all kinds of things are getting faster and faster and faster, and that means we have to embrace change. Whenever major change happens, there is always the same response by us as individuals, and it's an S-curve. It's called the change transition curve. So here we go. On this axis, on the y-axis, we've got self-esteem, confidence, and our own performance. And on this axis is time. So let's say some change occurs. The world isn't quite how it used to be. So what should we suggest? Here we go. The Director General announced this morning that the head office of TRA is no longer going to be in Dubai, it's no longer going to be in Abu Dhabi, it's going to be in Sharjah, and everyone will have to move. Okay? Our reaction to that will be this. Number one, shock. Yeah, you'd be shocked, wouldn't you, if that had happened this morning, yes? You'd be pretty shocked, wouldn't you? In fact, very shocked. Yes? And you would go downhill as a result. But what then happens is, and it's always the same, you get into denial. Oh, they don't mean it. The Director General doesn't mean it. I mean, we've been in Dubai and Abu Dhabi forever. I mean, why would we move to Sharjah? No, it's a joke. No. So you actually start feeling a lot better. Then another notice comes out, putting a bit of extra detail on. The move to Sharjah is going to happen by the end of December. So there's now awareness that actually, yes, it is going to happen. And you're on that slippery slope downhill again. And right down here, there's acceptance. You know what? It's going to happen. By Christmas, by the end of the year, we're not going to be in Abu Dhabi, we're not going to be in Dubai, we're going to be in Sharjah. And you're pretty low, aren't you? Then what happens next? Well, having accepted it, you start a bit of experimentation. You say to your wife or your husband, tell you what, next weekend, let's just go over to Sharjah and have a look at the, the schools for the children, and let's have a look at the houses, see what they're like. Yeah, we'll experiment. And you start searching. You start saying, well, actually, that school's quite, it's quite nice. It's actually, they'd be quite happy there. They've got facilities that the school they're at here hasn't got. And actually, that's quite a nice house. And finally, you get to the point where it's integration, where actually it all happens and everyone's gone. Who's going to accept that the fastest, ladies and gentlemen? Right brains or left brains? Absolutely. They love change. They will still go through that process, but it may be flattened, yeah? The attenuation will be different. But they're much more likely to accept it more quickly. Sorry. Right brain, yes. So right brains will accept that more quickly because they tend to like change and they fairly quickly get on board with what's going on. Left brains in your team, left brain colleagues of yours, will absolutely hate it. And probably they will have bigger highs and bigger lows. So what does that mean for you as a leader? How do you deal with that within your team? Any thoughts?
Trying to look at the positive sides of it, the better sides that
Yeah.
use yourself and your team as well.
Because you might in your team, you might have someone who's there and someone who's there at exactly the same time. And they might be upsetting each other, to be honest. And you've got to deal with that. And you've got to recognize the left brains need dealing with in a different way to the right brains. You've got to be perceptive of where they are and where they are on this curve. There's no choice. That is what happens when there is change. Now, I've talked about major change, but actually the same applies to some extent with minor change, because we get into a routine. This is the way I'm used to doing it. This is the way I've done it for so long. Why change it? But we've got to make that happen, because otherwise we're going to be left behind, in my opinion. Yeah? My job today is to get you thinking. I hope that's happening. I think I can see some cogs going around, so that's pretty good. Right. When change happens, generally speaking, 20% of people are on board immediately. They tend to be the right brains, of course. They're called the cultural architects. They go, yeah, I understand the need to move to Sharjah. Absolutely fine. Yep. Done. 50% are the don't knows. They're called the transformational followers. They're not really sure. And as a general rule, 30% are against. They're just firmly against, and they tend to be left brains, but not always. And when I was in your position, I used to get it wrong, I'll be honest with you. Because it was these people that I felt I had to convince, the against. They're the people I really worked hard on to change around. But it's the wrong way to do it. What you need to do is to work on the transformational followers, get them on board, and then you've got a critical mass to try and convince other people. That's the way to do it. You can't do it on your own. You need a critical mass of people who are understanding the logic behind the change, the reason for doing the change, and then jointly you can start convincing other people. You know what? Open minds are difficult, however. In 1880, Thomas Edison, the inventor of the phonograph, said, "The phonograph is of no commercial value." I love this one. Charles Dewar was the head of the US Patent Office in 1899, and he wrote to the president and said, "I resign because I am convinced that everything that's ever going to be invented in the world has now been invented." 1899. More recently, the head of IBM in 1943 said, "I think there's a global market for about 5 computers." I think probably every one of us in this room have got at least 5 computers personally these days. And even more recently, Bill Gates said 640K should be enough for anybody. So it's not easy to have an open mind. And again, I think we all need to recognize that with our peers and the people who work with us and for us. It's pretty difficult to have an open mind, but I think it's what we all increasingly need. Let me share a model with you. It's my favorite model. It's called the Change House. And what we have is a house with 4 rooms. And the argument is that any organization, whether it's a company, whether it's a department, whether it's a team, or an individual, at any moment in time, you are in one of these 4 rooms. And furthermore, you can only move from room to room in a predetermined way. So let me put some meat on the bone. The room of contentment. This is all about, we know what we're doing. Our business model is the only business model. We've been the market leaders for the last 10 years. Go away. Everyone these days are talking about the disruptors, aren't they? Well, this is the people who are being disrupted often. This is where all the hotel companies were when Airbnb came along. Airbnb is now the biggest hotel company in the world, but they don't own a single hotel. The biggest taxi company in the world is now Uber, worth $40 billion. They don't own a single taxi. But the people sitting here In some cases, are governments. The German government has tried to legislate against Uber and tried to protect their taxi industry. They've tried to make sure that their taxes are not underlined. It's trying to hold back, maybe, the tides of time. I remember I was here in Dubai in the first half of 2008. And I was at the Burj Dubai, and I was speaking to the general managers and the owners of most of the hotel chains, most of the hotels here in Dubai. And I always remember I said to them, it's coming. It's coming. It started in America, but there is a recession coming. You can no longer here in Dubai assume 98% occupancy of your rooms without doing anything. You need to start doing sales and marketing. You need to hone your sales and marketing skills, you hotel people. And it was really interesting because the room split almost into 50-50. I had half the room coming to me and saying, absolutely right, you're dead right, that's what we need to do. We need to start doing sales and marketing again because we've forgotten how to do it. And of course, the other side of the room, firmly in the room of denial, said to me, you don't understand. This is Dubai. We're different. They weren't different 12 months later. It's a very dangerous place to be, is the room of contentment. By the way, I would say to you, in my experience, government organizations generally have great difficulty not being in that room. Because often government organizations don't have competition, don't have cause or reason to challenge themselves. There's also the Sun Lounge. Marks and Spencer's in the UK about 10 or so years ago, that's where they were. This is where you lie back and you go, it's just so easy making money. It's just so easy. We will never accept credit cards. You know what? Marks and Spencer said that. We will never accept credit cards. We won't ever be in motorway service stations. Arrogant and conceited. Where you go next, and there's no choice, is the room of denial. And this is where there's lots of finger pointing, because of course it's all somebody else's fault, isn't it? It's the exchange rate, it's the weather, it's President Trump, it's anyone you can think of. It's all somebody else's fault. And one of the problems is, unless you get some sort of catalyst to get you out of that denial, where you end up is in the dungeon of denial. And that's when the business, the organization is in serious trouble. What you need is some sort of catalyst that says, do you know what? It's me that is the problem. It's us that is the problem. We are in denial about the change that needs to happen. If you can do that, where you go next is the room of confusion. This is where you're sort of half doing it the old way, you're half doing it the new way. There's revolving doors, there's new people coming, there's old people going. There's rumors swirling around everywhere. One of the dangers is people say to themselves, well, look, for years we've been told we're going in this direction, now we're being told to go in this direction. Do you know the safest thing we can do? Keep our heads down. And then they're in the paralysis pit, and the whole place seizes up. So leadership is at a real premium here. You've got to keep repeating the message. This is where we're going. This is where we're going. Follow me. Follow me. There's also a danger of the wrong direction door. Because it is so confusing and so painful, you see a little bit of light over there and you say, oh, that's got to be the way out. Now you run. But in reality, it's not the right way. But where you're trying to get to is the room of renewal. The room of renewal is where you challenge every paradigm in your organization. There is absolutely nothing you do just because you've always done it that way. Even if it's the crown jewels that TRA was built on, you pick them up, you look at them, you go, is that right for the future, yes or no? And if the answer's no, you throw them away. It's also where you are always raising the bar. You are always saying, but we can do better. But we can do better. But there's a danger when you're in this room of renewal, because you know what? The room of contentment looks very attractive. It's very alluring. There's a big suction trying to suck you over. And what I'd say to you is, there's probably nothing more important than these days than working out not just how you get into that room of renewal, but even more importantly, is how you stay there. I did some research into Caterpillar, one of the largest corporations in the world. And this massive, massive corporation, you can see going through every single room of this house. Say they're up here. They were absolutely preeminent in the world in construction equipment. They were number one. And they believed there was a massive barrier to entry because construction equipment requires massive servicing. And what Caterpillar had was all around the world, they had service centres that they owned. So they believed, the main board of Caterpillar believed, we really can't have any competitors. We are number one, no one can come in. And then those clever Japanese people, Komatsu, had a little think. And they thought, how can we overcome that? Simple answer. Design, manufacture construction equipment that doesn't need servicing. Then you don't need service centres. And that's what they did. And Komatsu started selling, and they started being successful. And you can actually see the main board of Caterpillar get into denial. Oh, they're tiny. Komatsu are nothing. They can't compete with us. And they just kept dismissing them. Until finally, Caterpillar realized they had a major competitor on their hands that were really undermining their model. And it was fascinating to watch or to read this, what Caterpillar main board then did. Because they came into confusion. And what they did is they went out and bought a valve company, a massive valve company that had nothing to do with construction equipment, and they put all their best people in to run the valve company, and the construction equipment went downhill even faster. Until finally they got a new chief executive who got rid of the valve company, reassessed what they needed to do, and he got them back up in the room of renewal. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is that, as far as I am aware, they are the only corporation in the world who have got a subcommittee of their main board that has one job and one job only, and that's to make sure Caterpillar never, ever again leaves the room of renewal, because it frightened them so much. People often ask me, what are the characteristics of an organisation that can stay in renewal? And what I observe is that two things. Generally, they don't over-celebrate. They celebrate their success, but they never over-celebrate. But the other one, and probably the most important one that I see, is if you talk to anybody in the organisation and you say, oh, you've done well this year, haven't you? You will always get the same response from everybody at every level in the organisation, and that response is, yes, but we can do better. It's never good enough. Yes, but we can do better. Never, ever do you even start to sit back on your haunches. Whatever you do, it's never good enough. So, what room is TRA in? I won't tell anyone else, just between you and I. Anybody, what room is TRA in, would you say? Sir? Renewal. I thought somebody might say that. Good. Anyone else? Is renewal how it feels for everybody? That's great.
Perhaps there is a reason for that. I would expect that you would get a renewal response from a lot of people here. And I think there is a reason for that, is because the federal government does not let the entities in the federal government feel that they are like a government.
Yes.
And sitting there as a government.
Yes.
They always keep pushing as if you are in a competition.
Yeah.
And you have a very high bars that you have to.
And that's fantastic, because as I said, my experience is it's very easy for government organisations to be in contentment. And I think to always have that, that pressure from behind. I mean, is that what you see and feel? Yes, said with feeling. That's great. I did a one-day masterclass in Kuwait a little while ago, and it was a profitable growth. It was about commercial things mainly, but I also talked about the Change House. It was really interesting. I discovered halfway through that I had in the room the head of the Kuwait civil service. And I spoke to him and I said, so, you know, this is all sort of business and commercial stuff. Is it relevant to you? And he said more or less exactly what you've said. He said, yes, the civil service is a government organisation, but we require it to operate as if it was a business and the very best business. So I just think that's incredibly healthy, and long may it last. What about individuals? You know, without naming names, you've got 300 odd people, I think, in TRA. What rooms are they in? Do you think there's any individuals who are in contentment, for example? Because they usually are. Yeah? I don't want names. But if there are, it's back to us all. Because you know what? If you've got people over here, they will act like a sheet anchor. They will stop you really getting into renewal and performing. And you need to work on these people. We all need to work on these people. Now, it may be, as we've talked about earlier, to do with the change that's just happened. It may be that they're just in the low point of that cycle, but it may not. Because having people over here is dangerous. It's as black and white as that. It is dangerous to have people over here because it will affect, they will, how do I put this? They will drip poison. Maybe not consciously, it may be unconsciously, but they'll drip poison about the change that's happening. Sharjah? Pfft, forget it. And they'll try and be terrorists within the organisation and try and persuade other people. Oh no, let's start a movement against this Sharjah thing, or whatever it might be. It's dangerous to have people over here. So again, I'd say to you, it's a job we all have to do. People say to me that this model can be a great catalyst for discussion. Please use it. Anyone in the organisation, ask them, where are you? Where's our department? Where's the company? It can be a great catalyst for a discussion then about where they are, where we're going, and how we stay in that room of renewal. Any questions? Thoughts? Silence again.
If we say that we have people here and this group.
Yep.
The denial, and we found some people there. What should we do with them? We have to take them to the side.
Okay. The question is, if we've got some people in denial, what do we do to get them over to the right-hand side? Very good question. I think what we have to do is to listen to them. It's that word again. We need to sit down and give them time. We've got to give them the benefit of our time. Now, sometimes you get terrorists who are terrorists for the sake of it, but I think generally people are not like that. They've probably got some genuine reason where they just simply don't understand why what is happening is happening. You've got to listen to their concerns. A little story for you, if I may. One of the most traumatic thing that can happen to any of us, in my experience, is we're working for an organisation, working for a company, and they are taken over by another company. And it's often the little things that are the most important. And I was speaking to, I can actually, I'll tell you who it is, but about 3 years ago, I was speaking, it was a massive corporation in the UK called AMEC. They're civil engineers, construction people, thousands and thousands of people. And they were buying Foster Wheeler of the USA. Sure, you know that there's an acid test of any acquisition as far as I'm concerned, and that's after 90 days. Are the people in the company that has been acquired, are they saying us and you, or are they saying we? That's the test. Are they now saying we? And I said to them, and I'm sure you know, that it's the small things that are important. As an individual, I want to know, firstly, have I got a job anymore? Secondly, I want to know, is my pension being protected? It's these little things that are important. And I said to them, but I'm sure you've got all this covered, haven't you? And believe this or believe this not, the chief executive, it went very quiet, and then the chief executive said to me, he said, we've got 125 transition teams in place, but not one of them is focused on the people. I just couldn't believe what I heard. But these were all engineers, and they got into, it was all left brain stuff. Everything they were doing was left brain stuff. It was all about structure. But you know, when we are in a situation personally where our personal lives are threatened, we're all actually over there on the right, and that's what we need to address. It's a long answer to your question, but if you've got people over here, we should assume they're there for a reason, and it's our job, I think, to find out what that reason is and to then handle their problems step by step. Because it may be something very small. It may be, I don't know, my mother-in-law is very ill and the hospitals in Dubai are better than the hospitals in Sharjah. That may be the problem. It's our job to find out. Oh, I thought you put your hand up. You were scratching your nose. Anyone else? Sir.
I think if you want to move the people at 30% of the denial, involve them in the decision that you take why you're moving to Sharjah.
Yes.
And the other thing is, show the change. If we go to Sharjah, what extra are they going to get? For example, parkings, for example, shared parkings, parking in the sun, or for example, better working places. Just involve them. Maybe something that a disadvantage in Dubai you are trying to rectify in Sharjah.
I couldn't agree more. And I'd even say you need to set up a transition team that has people in it right the way through the organization, and they are the champions of the change, of the move. Absolutely. I quite agree with you. I mean, one thing I would say, however, you may have noticed when I put up that list of what employees want, money wasn't mentioned. Wasn't in that top 8 at all. And I think one of the things that I see in some organizations is that the answer to everything they think is to throw money at it. That is not the answer for all of us. Yes, of course, money motivates us to some extent, but if we have the sort of fundamental problem we're talking about, throwing money at the problem does not solve it. We've got to get into people's heads and listen to them. Okay, we're nearly there. Anything else? Okay, so let me just finish today with back to the model that I showed you earlier. So we've said all that, but I think we need to add to that. We need to talk about leadership. And I think for winning organizations in the future, our leadership style has to be firstly one where we are spending more time in this helicopter of mine than we used to. More time up there, looking over the horizon at what's coming. And that's called adaptive leadership. Adaptive leadership assumes things are going to change. That's the mindset. It's not going to stay the same, it's going to change. And that's where we need to be. I would also say to you that in order to do that, you've probably got to find 20% of your time. 20% of the time that you have today, you've got to find from. So that's a day a week you've got to find. In order to spend time up there looking at the future and planning for the future. As leaders, particularly, that's what we've got to do, but I think it's probably everybody. And I think that then plays into something else we've talked about today. If you're going to find 20% of your time, you have got to delegate more. You've got to micromanage less. You've got to trust people more than you have in the past. And I think all of those things are pretty healthy. But there's something else. I think we need what I would call an enterprise culture. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, I think we need every single member of TRA being proactive in taking initiatives, whether it's something like a QR code for dementia patients, whether it's thinking about new things that could be used, whether it's thinking about out there helping some smaller businesses. But I don't believe we can afford these days to have employees, to have members of our teams who are not actively being proactive and all the time taking initiative. Now, there are risks involved in that because sometimes we'll get it wrong. But so what? We also need a culture that is a toleration of failure, and that, for me, is an enterprise culture, and that's what we need. So just before we finish, let me just show you something. How do I get that off? Oh. In Holland, in the Netherlands, the government own the Rijksmuseum, which is a famous museum and art gallery. And they've got some very famous paintings in there, including this one. This is a very famous painting by Rembrandt, painted in 1642, and it was called Guards of the Night. And the Dutch government were getting concerned because they felt that not enough people were visiting the Rijksmuseum, and in fact the visitor numbers were going down, and they wanted something doing about it. And someone somewhere came up with an idea. And it worked. Attendance at the Rijksmuseum went up as a result. But who came up with that idea? Who would come up with that idea in TRA? That's the challenge I put to you today. So let me finish by saying, I think we all need three things above everything else. You've got to believe. Whatever it is you're doing, no matter where you are in the organization, you've got to believe in what you're doing. If you don't believe, you'll get sussed. You'll get worked out. People will understand that you don't believe. They'll be able to see that you don't believe. And if you don't believe, you've got to find a way that you can believe by sharing with your team. And you've got to believe with a passion. You know, passion is not something you leave at home. It should be oozing out of the pores of your skin. Passion is infectious. People follow people with passion. But probably the most important of all is you've got to have courage. Organizations only move forward if you take risks. All of us. All of us. It's our job to take risks. Yes, it might be the risk of standing up and shouting out about an idea you've got and taking the risk that people laugh at you. They won't, by the way. It may be the risk of taking on board some of this technology and saying, well, how about using it here? How about using it there? But whatever it is, please have the courage to take that risk. You're not going to have your head chopped off, are they, sir? No. They are not. You are not going to have your head chopped off. Please take an initiative. Because I really believe these are the most exciting times we have ever lived in. And if you can do those things, I guarantee TRA will absolutely fly. Thank you. Thank you.